Where are you watching us from? Write in the comments.
I have never been a jealous husband. I didn't pry into her phone, didn't ask unnecessary questions, didn't make scenes. We had 12 years of marriage, 2 children, a house where we felt calm and happy. But one day, one random event made me see everything differently. One little thing, one inconspicuous gesture, and my whole life turned upside down. Now listen carefully because this is the story of how I found out my wife was cheating on me. Rachel's text came in at 6:42 p.m. I'll be home late tonight, going out with colleagues to discuss a project. I stared at the message for a moment, rereading it like the words might change if I looked long enough. A normal husband might just shrug it off, trust his wife, go about his evening without a second thought. But something about the text didn't sit right with me. Maybe it was the phrasing, too formal, too structured. Rachel and I had been married for 14 years. I knew how she talked, how she texted. She wasn't the type to write something like that. Usually, if she had to work late, I'd get something casual. Work's a nightmare. Don't wait up for me. Boss is making me stay. Ugh. Love you. But this message? It was like she typed it out carefully, making sure there was no room for question. Almost like she needed an airtight excuse. I locked my phone without replying and set it down on the counter. The house was quiet. The kids were at a friend's place for a sleepover, so it was just me tonight. I had planned on making dinner, but now I didn't feel like cooking. I decided to order takeout instead. Something easy. I had just started scrolling through a food delivery app when my phone buzzed again. This time, a call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Hello. A man's voice came through the line, casual, a little rushed. Hey, this is Marco's Pizza. Just wanted to confirm the delivery details. I frowned. What? Your wife placed an order. Dinner for 2, large pepperoni, garlic knots, and a Caesar salad. She gave this number, but no address. Where should we drop it off? For a second, I didn't say anything. My stomach dropped. My wife ordered it. I asked, my voice carefully even. Yep, placed about 10 minutes ago. I gripped the phone tighter. And where was it supposed to be delivered? That's the thing. There was no address listed. Just the phone number. Maybe she meant to call back? I stood in the middle of the kitchen, my free hand resting on the counter to steady myself. Rachel said she was out with colleagues. Why would she be ordering dinner for 2? And why wouldn't she put in an address? For a brief moment, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she ordered for a coworker. Maybe she planned on picking it up and forgot to call back. There had to be some logical explanation, right? But my gut said otherwise. Cancel the order. I said finally. You sure? Yeah. Don't deliver it. The guy hesitated, then said, All right, have a good one. The line went dead. I placed my phone down and just stood there. The kitchen felt colder all of a sudden, the silence heavier. I wanted to brush it off, tell myself I was overreacting, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Rachel was good at covering her tracks. I had never had a reason to doubt her before. She was charming, careful, always knew how to say the right things to make people believe her. But this was sloppy. This was a mistake. A mistake I wasn't going to ignore. Instead of texting her back, I pulled up our joint bank account on my phone. I scrolled through the recent transactions, my eyes scanning for anything unusual. And that's when I saw it. A charge from earlier today. Small, almost insignificant. Coffee and a hot dog. Not from a restaurant near her office. Not from one of her usual spots. It was from a tiny cafe on the other side of town. One I recognized immediately, because I had been there before. It was the kind of place couples stopped at during lunch breaks. The kind of place you only went to when you wanted something quick, easy, and discreet. Rachel had been there, right before she sent me the text about her work meeting. A strange calm settled over me. Not anger, not heartbreak, just cold, calculating certainty. I wasn't going to jump to conclusions, not yet. But I wasn't going to ignore the signs either. Rachel thought she was smart. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone screen. The charge from that tiny cafe wasn't much, just a few bucks for coffee and a hot dog, but it wasn't about the money. It was about where she was when she bought it. Rachel wasn't supposed to be on that side of town. She worked downtown in a sleek office building filled with conference rooms, polished floors, and expensive coffee machines. Her usual spots were the chain cafes near work, the ones where she could grab a quick latte in between meetings. But this place? It was out of the way. A street cafe tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop. I knew it well because I'd been there before. Not alone. I clenched my jaw, locking my phone and setting it face down on the table. I could feel the pieces shifting in my mind, the weight of them settling into place. Rachel had texted me about working late after she had been there. And now, just hours later, she had ordered dinner for two from a completely different location without listing an address. A lie. I just didn't know how big of a lie yet. I forced myself to go about my evening as usual. I watched TV, scrolled mindlessly through my phone, but I wasn't really paying attention. My mind was running through scenarios, trying to decide if I was imagining things or if my gut was right. I didn't want to be that husband, the paranoid, jealous type, the guy who saw problems where there weren't any. But the feeling in my chest told me otherwise. Rachel got home a little after 11. I heard the garage door open, then the sound of her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. I stayed seated on the couch, pretending to be half interested in some late-night talk show. She walked in looking different. Her makeup was fresh, like she just touched it up before coming inside. Her perfume was strong, not the faint trace it usually was after a long day. She smiled at me, a little too bright. "Hey, babe, you're still up?" I glanced at her, keeping my expression neutral. "Yeah, couldn't sleep." She nodded, setting her purse down on the counter. The meeting ran late. We had a ton to go over, but I think we made some good progress. She said it so smoothly, so effortlessly, like she had rehearsed it. I wanted to test her. "Where'd you guys go?" She hesitated, just for a second, but I caught it. Then she smiled again. "That Italian place near the office. You know, the one with the good wine list." A lie. If she had really been there, there would be a charge on the bank statement. But there wasn't. I had checked. I nodded slowly. "Sounds nice." "Yeah, it was great." She stretched, then sighed. "I'm exhausted. I need a shower." And just like that, she disappeared down the hall, leaving her purse on the chair. I stared at it. My heart was pounding, my mind racing. I knew I shouldn't invade her privacy. That's what she would say if she caught me. "That's controlling, Ethan. That's not okay." But the thing was, this wasn't about trust anymore. This was about knowing. I stood up, walked over to the chair, and carefully unzipped her purse. My hands were steady, but my breath was slow, deliberate. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. Maybe proof. Maybe nothing at all. But then I found it. A small black box, hidden under her wallet. Inside was a delicate gold necklace, simple yet elegant. It wasn't something I had bought for her. Then, at the bottom of the purse, another discovery. A torn open condom wrapper. My vision blurred for a moment. My fingers clenched around the thin foil before I forced myself to put it back, carefully, just as I found it. I shut the purse, zipped it up, and sat back down on the couch. Rachel came out of the bathroom a few minutes later, her hair wrapped in a towel, her face fresh and clean. She smiled at me. Sleep didn't come easy that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rhythmic sound of Rachel's breathing beside me. It was a sound I had found comforting for years, a reminder that she was there, that we were together. But now it felt hollow, like an illusion. I turned onto my side, studying her silhouette in the faint glow of the moonlight streaming through the blinds. She looked peaceful innocent even. But I knew better now. The evidence was piling up piece by piece, like a puzzle forming an ugly picture. The dinner for two order, the small cafe charge from across town, the well-rehearsed lie about her work meeting, the black box with a necklace I hadn't bought, the used condom wrapper. How long had this been going on? And how the hell hadn't I seen it sooner? I closed my eyes and took a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Getting angry now wouldn't change anything. I needed more than suspicion. I needed proof, real, undeniable proof. Something she couldn't twist or explain away. I stayed in bed until morning, listening as Rachel's alarm went off at 6:30 a.m. She groaned softly, stretching before reaching for her phone. Her routine was predictable. Scrolling through emails, checking messages, then finally rolling out of bed to start her day. "Morning," she murmured, glancing over at me with a sleepy smile. "Morning," I said back, forcing my voice to stay neutral. She leaned down and kissed my cheek before heading to the bathroom. The shower turned on a few minutes later. I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing with what I was about to do. Rachel had been careful, but I knew there had to be more. People who cheat always leave behind traces, no matter how meticulous they are. And this morning, while she was gone, I was going to find them. When she left for work an hour later, she kissed me goodbye like she always did, grabbing her purse and coat on the way out. "Have a good day," she said with a smile. "You too," I replied, watching her walk out the door. I waited exactly 10 minutes, just long enough for her to get down the street, just long enough to be sure she wasn't coming back. Then I went straight for her coat. It was still hanging by the door, the same one she had worn last night when she came home late. I reached into the pockets, feeling around for anything, receipts, notes, something that might tell me where she had really been. My fingers brushed against something crumpled, a small piece of paper folded in half. I smoothed it out, my pulse quickening as I read the words written in her handwriting. "Friday, 7 p.m., 291 Westmont." I stared at it for a long time, my mind processing what I was looking at. I didn't recognize the address, but something about it felt off. I grabbed my phone and typed it into Google. Within seconds, the answer popped up on my screen. Westmont Suites, a luxury apartment hotel, downtown. Rachel had written down the name of a hotel, not a restaurant, not an office, a place where people rented rooms by the night. I sat down on the couch, gripping the paper between my fingers. This wasn't just some random mistake. This was deliberate. She had planned to be there. I forced myself to think rationally. Maybe she had a work event, maybe a client meeting, maybe there was some kind of logical explanation, but I already knew there wasn't. People don't write down hotel addresses unless they're meeting someone there. And I was going to find out exactly who. That night, I said nothing. I acted the same as always, keeping my expression neutral, my voice steady. Rachel, on the other hand, was different. She was softer than usual, more affectionate. She kissed me a little longer than she normally did, asked about my day with a level of interest that felt forced. She wasn't doing this out of love. She was doing it because deep down, she knew she was betraying me. And maybe, just maybe, some part of her felt bad about it. But not bad enough to stop. After dinner, she curled up next to me on the couch, resting her head against my shoulder. I let her. I played the role of the trusting husband, nodding along as she talked about her day. The whole time, my mind was elsewhere, thinking about Friday, thinking about 7 p.m., thinking about Westmont Suites. She had no idea I knew. No idea that in just a few days, I was going to catch her in the act. And when I did, she wouldn't be able to talk her way out of it. Rachel moved through the house Friday evening like she didn't have a care in the world. She hummed softly while getting ready, sifting through her jewelry box for just the right pair of earrings. I watched her from the doorway, arms crossed, face neutral. She hadn't even looked at me yet, too focused on her reflection. "Big night?" I asked casually. She smiled, finally turning to me. "Yeah, it's a charity gala. One of our clients is hosting it. We have to be there for networking and all that." A gala? That was new. All week, she had been talking about a wine tasting event with her friends. But now, at the last second, the story had changed. "Oh, yeah," I asked. "Where is it at?" She hesitated. Just a flicker, but I caught it. Then she shrugged. "Downtown. Some banquet hall. I don't even remember the name." Another lie. She turned back to the mirror, slipping on a pair of delicate gold earrings. I recognized them. They were the ones I had bought her for our anniversary last year. It was a small detail, but it made my stomach turn. She was dressing up, wearing a sleek navy blue dress that hugged her body, heels that made her legs look longer. She looked stunning, but I wasn't fooled. This wasn't for a work event. It wasn't for me. It was for him, the man waiting for her at 291 Westmont. I stayed quiet as she finished getting ready, grabbed her purse, and kissed me on the cheek. "Don't wait up, okay?" she said, smiling. I nodded. "Have fun." And just like that, she was gone. I waited exactly 10 minutes before leaving the house. I didn't rush. I didn't need to. I already knew where she was going. The address on that crumpled note had been burned into my mind all week. Westmont Suites. Rachel thought she was being clever, thought she could spin lie after lie, and I'd just take her word for it. But tonight, I was going to catch her. The drive downtown felt longer than it actually was. Every red light, every slow-moving car felt like an obstacle. But finally, I pulled up a block away from the hotel and parked in the shadows. Westmont Suites was sleek and modern, the kind of place where wealthy men took women who weren't their wives. I checked the time. 7:15 p.m. I knew she wasn't inside yet. I had left just minutes after her. And sure enough, at 7:23 p.m., a cab pulled up to the front entrance. Rachel stepped out. She had changed. Gone was the navy dress. Now, she wore a short black cocktail dress, something more revealing, something meant to entice. Her hair was down, perfectly styled. Her lipstick was darker, bolder. She glanced around as if making sure no one was watching. Then, she pulled out her phone and typed something. Seconds later, a man appeared from the side entrance of the hotel. Not a random stranger. Not some client or business partner. This man had a presence, confident, like he knew exactly what he was doing. He was older than me, maybe mid-40s. Broad shoulders, dark, tailored suit. He smirked as he approached Rachel, and she lit up, smiled like she hadn't smiled at me in years. I clenched my jaw as she leaned in, placing her hand on his chest. He said something low, intimate. She laughed, tilting her head just enough to let him brush his lips against her neck. They weren't in a hurry. They were comfortable. This wasn't the first time they had met here. And then, as if to confirm the worst, he placed a hand on the small of her back and guided her inside. I let out a slow breath. That was it. The proof I needed. Now, I just had to decide what to do next. Rachel wasn't at a charity gala. She wasn't sipping wine with her friends, laughing over some meaningless gossip. She was here, with him. I watched as the man led her through the glass entrance, his hand pressed against the small of her back like he owned her. She didn't flinch, didn't pull away. If anything, she leaned into him. That told me everything I needed to know. My wife wasn't being manipulated. She wasn't making some terrible mistake she would regret later. She wanted this. She had chosen him over me. I forced myself to stay calm. I had suspected this for days, hell, maybe even weeks if I was being honest with myself. But seeing it with my own eyes, that was something else entirely. I needed proof. So, I grabbed my phone, aimed the camera, and started taking pictures. Rachel in her tight black dress, standing too close to the mystery man. Rachel smiling at him like he was the only person in the world. Rachel disappearing inside the hotel with him. No hesitation. Photo after photo. Evidence stacking up like bricks in a wall. I should have felt something. Rage, betrayal, heartbreak. But instead, there was just this eerie calm, like my body had already accepted what my mind was still processing. I checked the time. 7:28 p.m. She had only just gone inside. I wasn't going to rush this. I had waited all week for this moment, and I wasn't about to blow it by acting impulsively. So I sat there. I waited. Time passed, and she never came back down. 10 minutes, 15, 30, an hour, still nothing. I kept my eyes on the entrance, watching every person who walked in or out. But Rachel and her lover, they never came back down. They weren't here for dinner. They weren't here for drinks. They were upstairs, in a room, and I could only imagine what they were doing. I exhaled slowly, gripping the phone in my lap. I had enough proof to confront her now. I could go home, throw the photos in her face, and watch her scramble for excuses. But no, that wasn't good enough. Rachel was careful. She was too good at lying. She would twist the truth, make up some bullshit story, turn it around on me like I was the crazy one. Maybe she'd even cry. Tell me it wasn't what it looked like, that I had misunderstood. Not this time. This time, I was going to catch her so thoroughly that there wouldn't be a single word she could say to get out of it. So I waited. Another hour passed. I watched other people go in and out of the hotel. Businessmen, couples, a few tourists, but not Rachel. Not them. That meant only one thing. They weren't in the lobby. They were upstairs. I looked at the hotel again, thinking. I needed to know what room she was in. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the pictures again, studying them. The man had led Rachel inside like he had done it 100 times before. He hadn't hesitated. That meant he knew exactly where he was going. That meant he had a room here, maybe permanently. I tapped my fingers against the wheel. A guy like him, well-dressed, confident, the kind of man who took what he wanted. He wasn't booking a cheap room under an alias. He was paying for comfort, for privacy, which meant he was staying somewhere high up. A penthouse, or at the very least, a suite on one of the upper floors. I needed to be sure. So I stepped out of the truck, keeping my head down, my cap pulled low over my eyes. And then I walked inside. Inside the hotel. The lobby was quiet, dimly lit with warm golden lights. Soft piano music played from invisible speakers. A young woman stood behind the front desk, her attention locked on her computer screen. I moved casually, acting like I belonged, like I was just another guest coming in late. The elevators were across the lobby, just a short walk away, and next to them, a small electronic guest directory. I made my way toward it, keeping my pace slow, deliberate. I tapped the screen, scrolling through the list of current guests. I didn't know his name, but I knew Rachel's. If she had checked in under her real name, I'd find it. If she had used his, well, I had a face to match. I kept scrolling, and then there it was. Brandon Hale, room 1507. I stared at the name, committing it to memory. Brandon Hale. That was him. That was the man Rachel had been sneaking around with. And now, I knew exactly where to find them. This was it. The last piece of the puzzle. I took one last deep breath. And then, I walked toward the elevators. It was time to catch them in the act. I stepped into the elevator, my hands steady, my breathing controlled. The door slid shut, and I pressed a button for the 15th floor. Brandon Hale, room 1507. Rachel's lover finally had a name. I leaned against the back wall as the elevator hummed upward. A part of me still couldn't believe it had come to this. 14 years of marriage, 2 kids, a home built from scratch. And now, here I was, following my wife to another man's hotel room like some detective in a bad crime drama. The worst part, she didn't even try to hide it well. She had grown comfortable. Too comfortable. Like she thought I was too blind, too trusting, too stupid to ever question her. That was her mistake. The elevator slowed, the light above the doors flashing 15 before they slid open. I stepped out into a long hallway, lined with doors on either side. Plush carpet muffled my footsteps as I moved forward, scanning the numbers. My heart beat heavier with each step. I stopped in front of the door. This was it. I listened carefully, my ear just inches from the wood. Nothing at first, just silence. Then a soft laugh, muffled voices. Rachel's voice. Low, intimate, teasing. The way she used to sound when she spoke to me. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. I had two options. Option one, I could knock. Demand she open the door. Watch her face crumble as she realized she'd been caught. Option two, I could walk away, leave, pretend I never saw anything, go home and let her keep up this act. Like hell I was doing that. Instead, I took option three. I pulled out my phone and hit record. I held it close to the door, capturing the sounds from inside. The rustling of fabric, the clink of glass, the low murmur of voices. And then, Rachel's giggle. I gritted my teeth. She hadn't laughed like that in years. Not with me. The recording wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Enough to prove she was here, in another man's room, where she had no business being. I ended the recording and slipped my phone back into my pocket. And then, I walked away, because this wasn't the moment. Not yet. Rachel thought she had me fooled, thought she could keep her secret hidden. But I wasn't stupid, and I wasn't going to let this slide. When I confronted her, it wasn't going to be with just suspicions. It was going to be with proof. I barely slept that night, lying next to Rachel, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing, knowing exactly where she had been just hours before. It was almost unbearable. She didn't suspect a thing. In the morning, she moved to the house like any other day, sipping coffee, scrolling through her phone, making small talk about the kids. I played along. I nodded when I needed to, smiled at the right moments, kept my voice even. But inside, I was counting down the days until I destroyed her lies. I didn't rush. If I had learned anything over the past week, it was that patience was the real weapon here. Rachel thought she was in control, thought she was pulling the strings. That was fine. Let her believe it, because when the moment came, I was going to rip the floor out from under her. Rachel was careful, but not as careful as she thought. She started texting more, smiling at her phone, taking calls in the other room. I let it all happen, and then, on Friday morning, she gave me exactly what I was waiting for. She came into the kitchen, dressed in casual jeans and a loose blouse, sipping her coffee like she had nothing to hide. "Hey, babe," she said, brushing a hand through her hair. "The girls and I are going to a wine tasting event tonight. Probably won't be back until late." I forced a smile. "That sounds nice. You deserve a break." She grinned. "Right? It's been such a stressful week." I almost laughed. A stressful week? Yeah. Sneaking around with another man must have been so exhausting. I kissed her on the cheek. "Have fun." She smiled, completely oblivious. "I will." And just like that, she walked away. I didn't. I waited until she left the house, giving her a 15-minute head start. Then, I grabbed my keys, slipped my phone into my pocket, and walked out the door. I already knew where she was going. 291 Westmont. She thought she was being clever, spinning the same lie about wine tasting that she had used last week. But I wasn't an idiot. I knew exactly where to find her. The drive to Westmont Suites felt different this time. Last week, I had sat outside like an outsider, watching from the shadows, collecting evidence. But now, Now. I was going inside. Now. I was ending this. I parked a block away, keeping my presence unnoticed. I didn't want to risk Rachel, or worse, Brandon Hale, seeing my truck outside. She thought I was at home, thought I was still that clueless husband who trusted every word she said. She had no idea what was coming. Inside the hotel, the lobby was just as sleek as I remembered. Dim lights, expensive decor, the kind of luxury meant for people with secrets to keep. I kept my pace steady, walking toward the elevators like I belonged. No one gave me a second glance. I already knew where I was going. Room 1507, the place Rachel had been sneaking off to, the place she thought I'd never find. I stepped into the elevator and hit the 15th floor button. The ride up was silent. No music, no distractions. Just me, standing there, jaw tight, heart beating in slow, steady rage. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't second-guessing. I reached the door, paused. I listened carefully, my ear just inches from the wood. Voices, low, intimate. Rachel's voice, Brandon's voice. Then a soft laugh. That same goddamn laugh I recorded last time. The one she hadn't given me in years. My fingers clenched into fists. This was it. No more waiting. I raised my hand and knocked. Silence. For a split second, there was nothing. Then footsteps. The sound of movement. A chair scraping against the floor. The muffled rustle of fabric. Someone was coming to the door. The handle turned. And then the door swung open. And there he was, Brandon Hale, standing in front of me, shirtless, wearing nothing but a towel. Smug, relaxed, like he had all the time in the world. Like he wasn't standing in front of the husband of the woman he was loved 10 minutes ago. "Can I help you?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. That set me off. I shoved past him, stepping into the room. And there, standing frozen in the dim light, Rachel. She wasn't in a dress anymore. She was in lingerie, black, lacy, something I hadn't seen her wear in years. She gasped when she saw me. Her face went pale. I let the door swing shut behind me, sealing the three of us inside. Rachel took a step back, clutching a sheet to her chest like that was going to cover up what she had done. "Ethan," she started, her voice shaking. I laughed. Cold, sharp. "Oh, please," I said. "I'm dying to hear this one. Go ahead, explain." Rachel stood there, frozen, her hands clutching the bedsheet like it was some kind of shield. Her eyes darted between me and Brandon, her breath coming out in short, panicked gasps. I had never seen her look this terrified before. Good. She should be scared. She should know that this wasn't something she could talk her way out of. "Ethan, she started, her voice trembling. I raised a hand, cutting her off. "No," I said, my tone sharp, commanding. "No more lies. No more excuses. I've been watching you for weeks, Rachel. I know everything." She sucked in a breath, her body trembling. Brandon, on the other hand, he smirked. That set me off more than anything. This bastard, standing there half naked in my wife's hotel room, acting like he had nothing to be ashamed of, like I was the intruder. I took a step toward him. He didn't back up. "You got something you want to say?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. Brandon shrugged. "Look, man." I pulled out my phone and hit play. Rachel's giggle. Brandon's voice, whispering something low, intimate. More laughter. Rachel's voice, soft and teasing. "Not here, let's go upstairs." The color drained from her face. I watched as she collapsed onto the bed, her hands covering her mouth, her entire body shaking. Brandon's smirk disappeared. "Yeah," I said. "That's what I thought." I pulled up the photos next, the ones I had taken outside the hotel last week, the ones of them kissing, of him holding her like she belonged to him. I tapped the screen. Sent. Rachel's head snapped up. W, what did you just do? I smiled. Cold. Emotionless. Oh, don't worry. I just sent these to someone who deserves to see them. Brandon's phone buzzed. He frowned, reached for it, and when he saw the message, his entire face changed. What the hell, he muttered, staring at his screen. Rachel's breathing turned ragged. Ethan, tell me you didn't. I did. I met her eyes, watching as the truth sank in. I sent them to his wife. Brandon's face twisted in rage. You son of a... I took a step closer, towering over him. What? I asked, my voice low, controlled. You gonna hit me? Go ahead. Give me a real reason to put you in the hospital. He hesitated, cowered. Instead, he grabbed his phone and stormed into the bathroom, slamming the door behind him. I turned back to Rachel. She was crying now, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. Ethan, please, she whispered. I just stared at her. 14 years of marriage, 14 years of trust, of building a life together. And this was how it ended? I pocketed my phone, exhaling slowly. This was your choice, I said, my voice quiet. Live with it. Then I turned around and walked out the door. I walked out of that hotel room, my footsteps steady, my heart calm. Behind me, I could still hear Rachel's muffled sobs, Brandon's angry voice, the sound of something hitting the wall, maybe a glass, maybe a lamp. Maybe Rachel had collapsed to the floor, realizing that the life she had so carefully built was crumbling right in front of her. I didn't care. I pressed the elevator button and waited. My mind was quiet. No doubts. No second thoughts. It was over. Rachel was no longer my wife. At least, not in my heart. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside. The mirrored wall reflected my face back at me. But for the first time in years, I didn't see the same man. The fool who trusted too much? Gone. The doors were starting to close. And then a blur of movement. Rachel. She had thrown on a robe, her bare feet silent against the carpet as she ran toward me. Her eyes were wild, desperate, filled with something I couldn't quite place. Fear? Panic? Or something else? Her lips moved, shaping words. Words I would never hear, because the door snapped shut. The elevator began its descent. I stood there, staring at my own reflection, my pulse steady. Rachel had made her choice, and I had made mine. But something lingered in my mind, something small, almost insignificant. That look in her eyes, that flicker of something more than regret. Was it just a realization that she had lost? That her perfect little lie had collapsed around her? Or was it something else? Something I had missed?